Romans 10 left us with the image of God's hands, outstretched all day long to a disobedient and contrary people, a picture of both patience and persistence. So the question naturally comes, has God finally given up on Israel? Have their unbelief and rejection of Christ put them beyond hope? Paul's answer couldn't be clearer. By no means. He points to himself as living proof. An Israelite, a descendant of Abraham chosen by grace, God has always preserved a faithful remnant, just as he did in the days of Elijah. Even when it seems like the whole nation has turned away, his covenant promises still stand. The remnant exists not because of human effort, but because of God's gracious choice. But here's where Paul takes us deeper. Israel's stumbling has a purpose. Their rejection of the Messiah opened the door for the gospel to spread to the nations. And God is using the salvation of the Gentiles to provoke Israel to jealousy, to stir in them a longing for what they have missed. If their loss meant blessing for the world, Paul says, how much greater will the blessing be when they are brought in? Paul paints the picture of an olive tree, God's covenant people rooted in his promises. Some branches, representing unbelieving Jews, have been broken off. Believing Gentiles have been grafted in. But this isn't a reason for boasting. It's a reason for humility. If God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare the arrogant ones either. We stand by faith alone, and faith leaves no room for pride. God is able and willing to graft Israel back in if they do not persist in unbelief. Then Paul reveals what he calls a mystery. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in. And in the end, all Israel will be saved, not every Israelite who has ever lived, but the full number of God's chosen from among them, gathered in by grace. God's gifts and his calling are irrevocable. He has bound all people, Jew and Gentile alike, over to disobedience so that he might have mercy on all. And it's here that Paul can't hold back his praise. The depth of God's wisdom, the scope of his plan, the sheer mercy of it all, it's beyond tracing out. From him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. So what does Romans 11 teach us? That God's promises to his people never fail. That even unbelief is used by God to advance his plan of salvation. That the people of God are one, believing Jews and Gentiles grafted into the same tree. That spiritual pride has no place in the heart of those saved by grace. That God's plan holds both judgment and mercy in perfect balance. That the story of redemption ends in worship because every part of it exists for the glory of God. Romans 11 calls us to humility, hope, and praise. The same God who sovereignly orchestrates history calls us to trust him with the mysteries we cannot fully see, knowing that every promise he has made will stand. And as we turn the page to Romans 12, Paul will take us from the heights of theology to the ground level of daily life, showing what it looks like to live in view of God's mercies.